Hello, everyone. I'm Nick, and I'm 15 years old. After I lost my mom, I was hoping life wouldn't be a challenge for me anymore. But recently, I was left alone on an island, thousands of miles from home. Of course, this wasn't a deserted island. These were paradise islands with perfect beaches, palm trees, and coconuts. I should have been happy there, but every day I just wanted to go home more and more. I missed my old life, and I wanted it back. But what made it even more painful was the realization that this was absolutely impossible. A year ago, our family went through hell. My mom was diagnosed with cancer. For months, she struggled with the disease. She went to a lot of hospitals, but nothing could help her. Even with our support, she was getting worse and worse, and soon she was gone. It broke me and my dad into tiny little pieces. We mourned her for a long time. We were both depressed, and my father stayed in the house for weeks. On the contrary, I went to public places and wandered around the city. It helped to distract me from my grief. After a couple of months of life like this, my father's friends forced us to go to a psychologist to fix our mental health. So we did. And after many sessions and conversations, the doctor suggested that we needed a change of scenery. Maybe to make cosmetic repair in the house, or move, or to even live in another city for a while. It would help to distract us, and our grief would fade away quicker. My dad took this advice in stride and decided to move on. But he decided to not just live in another city, he wanted to fly to another country, thousands of miles away. I liked that idea too. It was like we were going on an adventure. Besides, I was just finishing up my school year, so we didn't even hesitate for a second. Dad booked the tickets, and we left the States. And here we were in paradise. We rented a villa with a pool and an ocean view. I have to say, it was beautiful. Every day, I ate exotic fruits, swam in the ocean, and rode a scooter. For me, it was a resort, and all I did there was just have fun. But even the most interesting and cool things eventually get boring. I know you think I'm a fool for not appreciating this heavenly life. But believe me, after a month of this life, you'd get tired of it all too. Because the most important thing is human contact and communication. And that was the problem. My dad is a freelancer, and he worked hard. So he spent all day at home on the computer. He didn't even walk with me. I became sad and lonely, and I began to want to go home really bad. But my father liked our new life. I think he was happy. So I endured my loneliness for him. I saw how bad he got when he was depressed, and I didn't want it to happen again. So I was just waiting for the end of the summer, when we'd fly back and I would go back to school. But when the time came, my father said that he didn't want to leave. He liked it so much that he wanted to live there, and he was happy. And at home in America, there was only reminders of the death of his beloved wife waiting for him. But I had to go to school, and I missed my friends so much, so we came to a compromise. We agreed to spend another month there, and then go home. I have to say, those were the longest days of my life. I just didn't have anything to do. So, just like after the death of my mother, I began to visit public places when I was sad. I would take Dad's scooter and drive into town just to see how other people lived. And on one of those days, I thought that I lost my father forever. Heavy rain started when I was in town. It was pouring so hard that in a few seconds, my clothes were completely drenched. This was common in the rainy season, and I hoped that the sun would be out in a few minutes. But not this day. A strong wind started, and I could hear thunder in the distance. Obviously, there was going to be a very strong storm. The wind blew away the tents and umbrellas of the street vendors, and the rain beat on the roofs so hard that I could barely hear myself think. Suddenly, I saw how the wind tore off pieces of house rooftops and carried them away. Then, all the people realized that it wasn't just rain, and the streets began to panic. Someone tried to hide their belongings in their house. Someone ran for cover. Thunder and lightning grew louder, and I became more afraid. I stood as if I was in a daze, wondering what I should do next. Suddenly, I distinctly heard a cry, and it seemed to wake me up. I looked around and saw a little girl standing in the road and crying with fear. It looked like she couldn't find her parents. No one cared about her. Everyone was just trying to save themselves. I had to get her out of the way or someone was going to hit her. I was right. As soon as I picked her up, a motorcycle raced past us at high speed. He could have hit her without even noticing. I had to find the girl's parents, but there was no time for that. The epicenter of the storm was already over the city. I looked around and saw people running into the cafeteria, so I ran after them. I was lucky to get off the street. The wind carried branches and limbs through the streets. Some fragments and pieces of roofs were flying around at a crazy speed. It was very dangerous outside, but the cafe was safe. So I waited out the storm for about an hour. I found people who knew the parents of the girl that I picked up off the road. I was glad I could help her. Her parents must have been very worried at the time. Suddenly, I realized that my father didn't know if I was okay or not. He had to be very worried. Dad knew that I was in town, and he could probably see the horror that was going on here. Then I decided that I had to get home as soon as possible to calm him down. I ran outside, and I saw people starting to deal with the consequences of the storm. It was terrible. I could only hope that everyone was okay. I tried to find my scooter, but it looked like it got lost in the chaos, so I just ran toward our house. I knew it would take too long, so I took a shortcut. I decided to run through the forest and then go to the beach, and I'd be home in no time. But I had made a huge mistake. This rainforest was very dense, and while I was running, I got a dozen scratches on various bushes and branches. Plus, after the storm, the ground was very wet and soft, so running through it was incredibly hard. I wished 1,000 times that I hadn't decided to go through the forest. Soon I got really tired. I lost my concentration, my foot got stuck in the roots of a tree, and I fell to the ground and hurt myself pretty bad. There was no time to brush myself off, so I continued on my way. I was limping and my arm was hurt, but I made it, and I saw the most horrible sight in my life. Our villa was on fire. A fire truck was parked nearby, and they were trying to deal with the flames. The lightning must have hit the house and caused this disaster. The worst part is that my father was inside. I started screaming, crying, and trying to get in there, but the rescuers stopped me, and when they saw that I had injuries, they called an ambulance. I can't tell you how I felt. I knew that I had lost my only family, and there was nothing I could do about it. I just watched the fire destroy our house. I was in a daze. They took me to the hospital and put a cast on my arm. I didn't even say a word for a couple of hours. I was completely shattered, and I had no idea what to do next. I didn't even want to think about it, and nobody cared about me. The hospital was full of other hurricane victims, so they just let me go. I mindlessly wandered around the city crying. This thought that I had lost my dad was burning inside of me. But suddenly, I heard a familiar voice. Someone shouted, "Nick, where are you?" It was like I was waking up from a bad dream at that moment. I ran toward the voice, turned into the street, and then I saw him. It was my dad. He was running through the streets looking for me. I shouted, "Dad!" and I ran toward him and hugged him tightly. It was incredible. I thought that my father was dead and I was alone. But here he was, standing in front of me, and it was the happiest moment of my life. It turned out that when the storm began, he ran to look for me in the city. He thought I was in danger, and he wanted to save me. This was probably around the same time that I was hiding in the cafe with other people. And while my father was looking for me in the city, I was running through the woods to find him at home. Thank God Dad wasn't at the villa when the lightning hit. Soon we returned home and found that absolutely all of our stuff had burned. We lost everything, but we didn't care. We had each other, and that's all we needed. We overcame a lot of problems to get back home to America. We had no money, no documents, nothing. But here we made it home, and we are happy. This event helped us to understand that we still have something to live for. Sure, we both miss my mom, but that's no reason to stop moving forward and sequester ourselves at home. And even escaping to a fabulous island wouldn't change anything either. You have to learn how to move on and appreciate what you have.